First, accommodation and 22 kilograms of baggage included. But that's not all. We also give you peace of mind because we've been named a Which recommended provider for package holidays. Jet2 Holidays. Package holidays you can trust. APTRA and ATOL protected.
No. No. No.
What are you doing?
I don't like any of our preset radio stations. We need a new car.
With the Jaguar E-Pace at $299 a month on personal contract hire, you'll find a reason.
That's better. And it's a Jaguar.
Initial rental £3,588. 48-month term, subject to status. 8,000 miles per annum. Excess mileage and return conditions apply. No ownership option. Ends 30th of September. Participating retailers only. Jaguar contract hire.
Global news 24 hours a day. On air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi announces formal impeachment proceedings against President Trump.
The actions taken to date by the president have seriously violated the Constitution, especially when the president says, Article 2 says I can do whatever I want.
Republican Congressman Chris Stewart.
How can they so definitively say, as Ms. Pelosi said, he has betrayed his oath of office. He has betrayed national security. If they want to have a serious impeachment proceeding, then they can't start out with already the guilty plea or the guilty finding.
New York's Metropolitan Opera says Placido Domingo has agreed to withdraw from all future performances at the Opera House following accusations from multiple women of sexual harassment. The Massachusetts Public Health Council has unanimously approved a 4-month ban on the sale of vaping products in that state. I'm John Trout.
If there really were such a thing as business as usual,
we are not seeing acceleration.
You wouldn't need Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
They talk about competition.
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks are slumping in Europe and Asia, while U.S. stock index futures edge lower as investors weigh the deepening political gridlock in Washington against prospects for reduced trade tensions between the U.S. and China. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 9 points. Dow futures down 65. NASDAQ futures down 38. The DAX in Germany's down 1.25%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.64%. The yield on the 2-year 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.4% or 79 cents at $56.50 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.1%, down $2 to $15.3820 an ounce. The euro 1.0999 against the dollar. The yen 107.31. And today we are looking for a report on new home sales out at 10 o'clock Wall Street time. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced an impeachment inquiry against President Trump. Allegations surfaced last week that Trump improperly pressured the government of Ukraine. Meanwhile, President Trump has authorized the release of the transcript of his phone call with the president of Ukraine. The president says it will rebut claims he leaned on Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Biden. Meanwhile, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff says the whistleblower who reported the call now wants to speak to Congress. In baseball, the Yankees lost, the Mets won, and still stay alive with their slim playoff hopes. The Nationals swept a doubleheader against the Phillies and clinched a wild card spot in the playoffs. The Orioles and Red Sox won, the Giants and A's lost. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts, more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
9 on Wall Street and live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Want to get more on our top story this morning. An impeachment inquiry now underway, now formally announced against President Trump. Brown University political science professor Wendy Schiller joins us now. Wendy, good morning. Of course, we've talked for months now about House Speaker Nancy Pelosi resisting this key step up to now. Are you surprised that this whistleblower complaint is what amounted to being the last straw for her?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a surprise for a lot of people. I think she still, probably believes this may be the biggest political gamble for the Democrats. And, I don't think anybody expects the Senate to convict President Trump. I mean, you wonder even if Mitch McConnell will go forward with the trial. He's sort of flouted a lot of constitutional norms in the last couple of years. So that makes me nervous as someone who thinks about this process. Are we risking breaking the system entirely? On the other hand, a power without practice is not a power. And the president seemed to believe that the Congress would never come after him. He was not letting people testify. He was not providing. The Inspector General wanted the report released on this Ukraine call, and he was just saying no. I mean, what else do you do if you're the House of Representatives? I think at this point she felt so pushed forward, there was no turning back.
Yeah, and it is interesting now to see with the announcement coming from Speaker Pelosi, the president is now saying, I'll release the transcript of the call. He's even sounding open to allowing the whistleblower to testify here. Could this potentially lead to something of a domino effect where the president might reverse his own policy of saying he's going to fight every subpoena, as he said a few months ago?
Well, I mean, that's a big question, and we don't know what's in the report itself. I mean, that's the thing that Congress has the legal right to, right? I mean, the transcript of the call you can sort of discuss, but the report itself is something Congress has a legal right to. And so whether he flips on lots of other things, but, having Rudy Giuliani, sort of this president's lawyer, dealing with Ukraine, I mean, there are things about U.S. foreign policy that should not be in the purview of the president's personal lawyer. And so there are other things I think Congress believes it will discover, particularly the Democrats in the House, about the way the president conducts foreign policy that could damage President Trump going forward. And this is going to be a slow drip. I don't think they're going to now not seize the opportunity to go after a lot of other things they're concerned about in the Trump administration.
Yeah, and given the fact that there have been so many fronts that the Democrats have pursued when it comes to investigating the president, my question is how much really changes with those investigations continuing under now a formal impeachment inquiry? I mean, the investigations were still going to go on, weren't they?
Yeah, I think it puts them all under an umbrella for a purpose. The independents, suburban voters, people who are not, really activist party Democrats who want to get, basically want the president to be ousted. I think they want to know why you're spending taxpayer dollars. There's other things to worry about. We have a trade crisis. If the economy slips, to me, that's the hugest gamble that Pelosi takes, is that if you start this train and you leave the station under impeachment, can you pivot in the spring if the economy starts to tank? Can you really pivot and turn around and face the economy and tell the voters that's what you care about? That's going to be much more difficult to do if you're really embedded in impeachment hearings.
Yeah, I want to get into that a little more, the risk of pursuing something like this in the middle of an election season. Is there a precedent for something like this? I'm thinking back to Richard Nixon when those inquiries were happening. He was already in his second term, and Bill Clinton, it seemed to help his prospects for re-election once that effort by the Republicans collapsed.
Well, and so Bill Clinton was also, as you rightly point out, in his second term, but he was trying to get Al Gore elected because every president wants to sustain their legacy. The problem was people say, it backfired on the Republicans, but it didn't because they kept the White House. Now, they kept the White House in 2000, with the Supreme Court decision and some other controversy, but they kept, they won the White House. The Republicans not kept it; they won it. So in that way, they energized their base in '98, and they turned the corner with their base and said, we're going to go after this president. We're going to try to oust the president without even blinking. The Republicans did that. So it's possible that this impeachment hearing, when it fails to oust the president, actually fires up the Democratic base in a way that nothing else can. And it may be that Pelosi looked at the front runners in the Democratic Party right now, this is very political, and said they can't do it, that they're not going to be able to get the base out. So the political cost to us with suburbans and independents may be outweighed with really rallying up the base to the point where they'll vote for anybody except Trump. And that's a big gamble, but that could be very much part of their thinking.
In the meantime, what does this mean for the Democratic presidential candidates themselves as they wait for this impeachment inquiry to proceed? You almost think that they have to sort of sit on their hands to wait how this plays out, don't they?
Yes, I mean, Nathan, you were pointing to the thing that really must be, I mean, I think it hurts Warren. It was with Warren who building momentum, tied with, if not exceeding Biden in Iowa, for example. You're really getting a lot of energy on the campaign trail. And now all the attention for the moment is on Biden. And this could, backfire on Biden if Hunter Biden did things that were perceived to be unethical. That'll hurt Biden. On the other hand, if he's vindicated, it helps Biden and it makes Biden the front and center vis-a-vis Trump. And that's got to hurt Warren. And it also takes attention away, sucks the air right out of the room for the Democratic candidates. I mean, who's going to be watching the debates when, in fact, everything's overshadowed by the impeachment proceedings?
And I would imagine it takes the oxygen out of the room when it comes to anything else getting done on a policy front in Washington, no?
Yeah, without, I think that's for people who wanted, let's say, gun control, better background checks. Certainly, Trump negotiating with China on trade. You have to believe this hurts the president on that. I mean, he hasn't, actually won much lately, except a few things from the Chinese lately. But nonetheless, trying to get that trade deal done by December, if you're more compromised and wounded, I think that makes it harder. And so it's harder for the president to do things on a foreign policy stage and a trade stage. It's, the Republicans and the Democrats will pass budgets. That's it. They don't want the government to shut down. You can't have impeachment and also shut the government down. And so I think that is, although Trump may decide that he's going to do it again just to get the attention shifted from impeachment to government shutdown. But nonetheless, I don't think we should expect anything from Congress in the next 12 months.
Obviously, there are a lot of questions to be answered when it comes to what was in the phone call with the Ukrainian president, what the whistleblowers' complaint specifics in that might be. But I'm curious whether you think that actual articles of impeachment actually could be put down on the House floor at this point. Is it about getting to that point, given the chances of a conviction in the Senate being so difficult, or is it just about the process for Democrats?
Strategically, you have to believe that Democrats understand that the base wants them to vote articles of impeachment. So if this is really about the base and really feeding the base, at some point they will have to face that moment. But if you're Nancy Pelosi, the best scenario is just to keep doing this for the next year. Is over and over, every single thing the president does, extend the inquiry to everything, everybody who can't testify, every memo, every phone call, whatever you can get. I mean, ignoring congressional subpoenas is, against the spirit of the Constitution. So the idea is this president too out of control? And the theme becomes, is he above the law? Is he out of control? Is he abusing his power? He's got latest poll of 69% people don't like the guy. There's a crack in the Trump Foundation besides the base. And so the Democrats strategically just want to keep poking at that crack and make people so uncomfortable with Trump that they want anybody but him. That's their goal. So ending this too early doesn't really serve that purpose.
Wendy Schiller, Brown University political science professor. Always good getting your insights at a historic moment here for the United States with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi now formally getting behind an impeachment inquiry in the House of Representatives. And of course, we're going to have full coverage as this continues to unfold, including the news conference from President Trump from the United Nations General Assembly that's set for 4 p.m. Wall Street time. We will bring that to you live here on Bloomberg Radio. Ahead of that, S&P futures are down almost 7 points. Dow futures down 44, and NASDAQ futures down almost 28 points. Bloomberg Daybreak continues.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
And we have Mary on the line. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Gary. The song I'd like to request is Take Me Breath Away. It reminds me of a bad relationship I once had.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they fleeced me of my money, were super clingy, suffocating, in fact. I couldn't breathe. But I am now free of them, and I've never felt better.
Nice one, Mary. Now, is there anything you'd like to say to that old flame?
Yeah, but unfortunately, cigarettes can't really hear you.
Stoptober. It's not you, it's them. Join the thousands of others quitting smoking this October. Search Stoptober.
Breathe in and out. Every day, you take 20,000 breaths. potentially exposing yourself to harmful particles of pollution. According to the Royal College of Physicians, air pollution contributes to around 1 in 20 deaths in the UK. But at E.ON, we believe it's time to do something about it. We've committed to installing ultra-fast electric vehicle charge points. We offer solar panels and batteries that collect and store energy. And we've helped a citywide transport operator introduce a large fleet of emission-free electric buses. It's time to clear the air. Search E.ON Clean Air.
Of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, September 25th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
Global stocks fall as the House mounts an impeachment inquiry into President Trump.
Risk premium on politics and geopolitics is elevating.
Equities in Europe and Asia decline after the S&P 500's biggest loss in a month.
House Minority Leader McCarthy says Democrats have a vendetta against Trump.
They have been investigating this president before he even got elected.
I'm Michael Barr. More on the impeachment inquiry ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Extra innings for the Mets and Yankees. Mets came from behind, beat the Marlins in 11 in 12. The Yanks lost to Tampa Bay.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Margin loans start at 3.62% and decrease for larger loan values. Learn more at ibkr.com/compare.
It's 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 7 points, Dow futures down 44, NASDAQ futures down 28. The DAX in Germany is down 1.2%, CAC in Paris down 1.5%, and the FTSE 100 down 0.9%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.64%, yield on the 2-year 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.2% or 67 cents at 56.62 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.2% or $2.40 at 15.3780 an ounce. The euro 1.0999 against the dollar, yen 107.31. Nathan.
Karen, we begin with political risks mounting for the White House as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi endorses an impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Here with the very latest is Bloomberg's Bob Moon.
Citing serious violations of the Constitution and the president's oath of office, Pelosi says Trump's conduct cannot be allowed to stand.
The president must be held accountable. No one is above the law.
The House Speaker said 6 separate committees will report to her on their findings under the umbrella of a formal impeachment inquiry. Trump told reporters it's been the single focus of Democrats.
Look, it's just a continuation of the witch hunt.
He added on Twitter, "Can you believe this?" and in all capital letters, "presidential harassment." Bob Moon, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Bob, thank you. It's an escalation of a long confrontation between the House and President Trump, though it's not clear how much a formal inquiry will change the direction of existing investigations. Anna Edgerton has more from our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington.
There were 6 House committees that were already investigating the president, his business associates, his personal finances, his tax returns, the Mueller report. Those 6 committees will continue their work, but it will be under the umbrella of formal impeachment proceedings. You can't just declare formal impeachment proceedings without any kind of House action. So what we'll be looking for with Congress returns from a 2-week break that's scheduled to begin next week is whether or not they're actually going to have a vote on the House floor on these articles of impeachment.
Without that vote, this action from Speaker Pelosi won't necessarily lead to charges against the president.
The S&P 500 suffered its biggest decline in a month after word of the impeachment inquiry. Goldman Sachs President John Waldron spoke exclusively to Bloomberg following the news.
Risk premium on politics and geopolitics is elevating. And I think for a long time, post the financial crisis, we actually had a pretty modest amount of risk premium in the marketplace around, let's just say, the broad category of geopolitics. That's starting to change.
President Trump holds a press conference today at 4 p.m. Wall Street time. We will bring it to you live right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Speaking of geopolitical risk, we have another incremental move in the U.S.-China trade war. Sources say Chinese companies are preparing to buy significantly more American pork. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis has more from Hong Kong.
The firms are looking into prices from exporters like Smithfield and Tyson Foods. The volume not set yet, but could be around 100,000 tons, some of that for state reserves. Now, the purchase comes shortly after President Trump criticized Chinese trade practice in his speech at the UN. So these imports might be a way to ease tensions with Washington. But China also badly needs added pork supply as its hogs have been decimated by swine fever. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, Brian. Those reduced trade tensions did little for stocks in Asia today, with equities in the region adding to losses on Wall Street. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with the details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. The Nikkei 225 fell 0.4%, while JGB futures climbed after comments from BOJ Governor Kuroda added to speculation of an interest rate cut in October. In China, the CSI 300 fell 0.8% as the nation's beige book showed China's economy was the weakest so far this year in the third quarter. The MSCI Hong Kong index posted its seventh decline in 8 days and has almost erased the 5.4% surge the index saw earlier this month when the government announced the formal withdrawal of the extradition bill. In Singapore, I'm Juliet Sarli, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Juliet, thank you. And the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson could address Parliament as soon as today after suffering an unprecedented legal defeat from Britain's highest court. We get the very latest from Bloomberg's Sebastian Salek in London.
The Prime Minister is landing back in a country in the throes of a Brexit problem that has turned into a constitutional crisis. He maintains he'll continue to negotiate for the EU for a divorce deal, but there were few signs when he met other European leaders in New York that there were any new ways of breaking the deadlock. And under current UK law, he's obliged to ask for a further extension of the delay in leaving until he can find a deal, something he has vowed he will not do. In London, I'm Sebastian Salek, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Sebastian, thank you. Coming up today, the Bloomberg Global Business Forum convenes in New York, bringing leaders together to combat threats from global warming to economic prosperity. Here with a preview is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
The event kicks off with a conversation between India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Michael Bloomberg, the founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Radio. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon and Bank of England Governor Mark Carney are among those who will speak on climate change. Jamie Dimon and Bob Iger, the heads of JP Morgan and Disney, sit down for a conversation with Bloomberg TV and radio. Plus, we examine the risks to big tech in interviews with Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi and Google CFO Ruth Porat. Tune in for live coverage throughout the day on Bloomberg Radio and Television. In New York, I'm Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. S&P futures are lower this morning, down about 6 points. Dow futures down 32. NASDAQ futures down 25. 10-year Treasury up 1/32, yield 1.64%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.60%. The euro is at 1.10 against the dollar. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It's 6:07 on Wall Street. Let's get more of what's going on around the world now from Bloomberg's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Nathan. The tide turned in the House with Speaker Nancy Pelosi announcing she's opening an impeachment inquiry on President Trump. Lawmakers and presidential candidates are reacting to the news. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says